You're looking at a stone tablet roughly the size of a dinner plate sitting in storage at the British Museum. It's catalogued, described as administrative text, and has been ignored for 80 years. But that description is wrong. Look at the symbols along the third row. See that cluster of wedges? That is Sumerian. Actual cuneiform, the oldest writing system on Earth. And someone carved it into this stone in what we now call Turkmenistan, about 4,000 years ago. Turkmenistan is 3,000 kilometers from ancient Sumer. That's the distance from London to New York. So why is it there? The story you've been told is that the Sumerians were confined to Mesopotamia, a cradle of civilization sealed by geography, that their culture, their writing, their gods stayed put. This tablet says otherwise. It says they went much, much farther. And that is the first problem. You see how the record gets thin here? Standard history textbooks mention trade routes, some cultural diffusion. They don't mention tablets like this. They especially don't mention where this tablet was found, because it wasn't dug up in a city or a temple. It was excavated from a cave system called the Koitendog Caves, over 1,400 meters underground. Not a tomb, not a sanctuary, a deep, vertical cave shaft. Who brings a clay tablet into a pit like that? To answer that, you need to read what it says. Most of the tablet is exactly what the museum says. Inventories, grain counts. That's why it was dismissed. But the third row isn't inventory. It's a name, a dedication. It reads, "For Enlil, great mountain, Lord of the Word, from his servant, the envoy of the far land of Arata." Arata, that name should mean nothing to you. In mainstream archaeology, it's a mythical place from Sumerian poetry. A legendary, unreachable city of gleaming lapis and gold, mentioned in just a few epic tales. But if it's mythical, why is an envoy from Arata signing his name on a stone in a cave in Turkmenistan? And why is he dedicating it to Enlil, the chief Sumerian god of wind and storms, a deity with no known cult that far east? You start checking the source. This tablet was excavated in 1939 by a Soviet geological survey team. Their report, filed in the archives of the Turkmen Academy of Sciences, notes the find and its depth. They sent it to Moscow. It arrived just as the Second World War began. It was shipped to London as part of a cultural exchange in 1947, catalogued incorrectly in 1951, and sat. The original Soviet field notes, however, contained another detail. This tablet wasn't alone. The survey team reported finding selenite crystals and fluorite deposits in the surrounding cave walls. In total darkness, those minerals emit a faint, persistent glow. The Sumerians had a term for that. In their hymns, they described the underworld not as a place of fire, but as a land of eternal darkness broken by luminous stones. They were describing a cave ceiling. That's not mythology. That's a geological report. So the picture changes. You have a Sumerian tablet found deep within a glowing cave in Central Asia, signed by an envoy from a supposedly mythical city. That resolves nothing. It only opens a deeper question. If the city of Arata wasn't a myth, what was it? A 2019 genetic study published in Science analyzed ancient DNA from skeletons in the Kopet Dag mountain range, the same region as the Koitendog caves. It found a distinct genetic signature entering the population around 2400 BCE. Not a slow drift, a bottleneck event, a migration. The study's authors suggested a rapid movement of people from the Iranian plateau, but they didn't reference Sumer. They didn't have to. The date is the anchor, 2400 BCE, the exact same period this tablet was fired. That's the second problem. Now you have two threads, a written record pointing east to a fabled city, and a genetic record pointing west toward Mesopotamia, meeting in the mountains of Turkmenistan. They converge on a single point. This isn't a story about a lost tablet. It's a story about a lost geography. The map you know is wrong. And to see how wrong, you need to follow the envoy's path out of that cave, into the mountains, toward a city that shouldn't exist. The envoy signed his name. The genetic study pinpointed the date. But Arata remains a place from poetry, a city of gleaming lapis and gold. That's the official line. So you go back to the source. The Soviet Geological Survey report from 1939, the one that documented the tablet, includes a map, a hand-drawn topographic map of the Khoitendog cave system. And on that map, right next to the chamber where the tablet was found, is a notation, a single word in Russian, Ararat. That's not a typo, that's a transliteration. The report's author, a geologist named Viktor Petrov, heard the local Turkmen name for the cave and wrote down what he thought he heard. Ararat, the mountain where Noah's Ark landed, a legendary, unreachable peak. But Petrov didn't know Sumerian. He didn't know that in the original epic poems, Arata and Ararat are written with the same root word, the same cuneiform symbol. He thought he was recording local folklore. He was recording geography. Now you have a coordinate, not a mythical city. A physical cave system named after it. So you follow the coordinate. You pull satellite imagery of the Kopet Dog Mountains. You overlay Petrov's 1939 map, and you see it. A natural rock formation that doesn't look natural. A series of perpendicular ridges that form a near-perfect square, 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer, visible only from a specific altitude. A geological anomaly. But anomalies don't have names. This one does. The locals call it Shar-e-Arata, the city of Arata. Not a city of gold, a city of stone. This is where mainstream archaeology stops, because there's no excavation there, no permit, no published papers, just a 2006 UNESCO survey that noted the geometric ridge pattern and classified it as a natural geological feature. No follow-up, no subsurface scans, just a footnote. But you have the Soviet map, and you have the satellite imagery. And you have one more thing, a 1978 hydrological study conducted by the Soviet Academy of Sciences. They were measuring water tables in the region. Their drill cores hit something unexpected at a depth of 80 meters. Not bedrock, a void, an artificial chamber. They sealed the borehole. No explanation. Their final report mentions cultural contamination risk and recommends no further disturbance. That report was filed, then buried, so you're left with a choice. You can accept the UNESCO classification, a natural feature, or you can look at the drill core data, the map, and the tablet that points directly to it. One of these things is wrong. And if the tablet is right, then the city of Arata wasn't a myth. It was a real, physical location. A Sumerian outpost 3,000 kilometers east of Mesopotamia. But why build a city there? Why build it in a mountain range so remote, so inaccessible? The answer is in the tablet's dedication. For Enlil, great mountain, Lord of the Word. Enlil wasn't just a storm god. He was the god of authority, of command. The word Enlil itself translates to Lord of the Wind. But in Sumerian administrative texts, wind also meant order, command. Enlil was the deity who gave kings their authority, their right to rule. An envoy dedicating a tablet to Enlil in a far land isn't just praying. He's documenting authority. He's saying, the command of Enlil extends here, to this cave, to this mountain, to this city. That changes everything. Because if Enlil's authority stretched that far east, then Sumerian kingship stretched that far east. The Standard Model says Sumerian influence radiated out slowly through trade and cultural diffusion. This tablet says it was a deliberate administrative expansion, an outpost established by royal command. But why? What resource was so valuable it required a royal envoy, a dedicated city, a temple to Enlil? Look back at the cave, the selenite and fluorite, the glowing stones. In Sumerian texts, these materials are never described as decorative. They're described as essential. The luminous stones were used in a specific ritual context, the determination of royal fate. The ceremony where a king received his mandate from Enlil required a chamber of total darkness, broken only by these glowing minerals. The cave wasn't a mine. It was a temple, a dark, glowing temple where kingship was legitimized. And if that ritual required specific minerals found only in that cave, then the city of Areta wasn't a trading post. It was a pilgrimage site, a place where Sumerian authority was literally mined from the earth. That's the third problem, because if Areta was a pilgrimage site for Sumerian kings, then there should be records of kings traveling there. But there aren't. Not in any mainstream corpus. The only references are poetic, metaphorical, which means either the poetry is wrong or the records have been removed. And one piece of evidence suggests removal. The tablet in the British Museum, the one with the envoy's name, is catalogued under a generic administrative number, but its original Soviet field tag, still attached, has another number, a cross-reference. That number corresponds to a ledger in the archive of the Turkmen Academy of Sciences, a ledger that lists 17 other artifacts from the same cave. 17. None of them are in the British Museum. None of them are published. The ledger says they were transferred to Moscow in 1940. Then the entry ends. So you have a choice again. You can assume those 17 artifacts are lost, or you can follow the chain. Moscow in 1940 means the State Museum of Oriental Cultures. Their catalog is not digitized, it's not online, it's a physical ledger in a basement. And that ledger, according to a 1992 inventory audit, lists 12 of those 17 artifacts as transferred to special collection. Special collection. No further details. The audit was conducted by a researcher named Elena Kovaleva. She published one paper on Sumerian trade routes in 1995. Then she stopped. She left academia. No explanation. Now the mystery isn't about a city, it's about a paper trail, a ledger that stops, a researcher who stops, a drill core that gets sealed, a UNESCO survey that classifies a perfect square as natural. Each of these is an administrative decision, a choice to not look deeper. And when you line them up, they point to the same conclusion. The city of Areta isn't lost. It's protected. Not by time, by bureaucracy. But why? What's in that mountain that requires protection? The 1978 hydrological report gives you the answer. They sealed the borehole because of cultural contamination risk. But that's a term from microbiology. From handling dangerous pathogens. They weren't protecting archaeology. They were protecting something else, something that required a sealed void, a classified ledger, a researcher's silence. And that brings you back to the genetic study. The 2019 science paper that found a population bottleneck in 2400 BCE. A rapid migration. The authors suggested environmental pressures, but they didn't test for one thing: cultural contamination. Not in the genetic sense, in the literal sense. What if the migration wasn't driven by climate? What if it was driven by a ritual? A pilgrimage to a glowing cave to receive the mandate of Enlil? What if the bottleneck wasn't a disaster? It was a commandment. That's the unanswerable question. Because the only way to test it is to excavate Shar-e-Arata, to open the sealed borehole, to find the 17 artifacts, and every attempt to do that has been stopped. By UNESCO, by the Turkmen government, by missing ledgers. So you're left with the tablet, the one piece of evidence that slipped through. The envoy's dedication to Enlil in a cave of glowing stone. It tells you everything except why. Why build a city around a cave? Why send an envoy? Why seal the records? And that question leads you to the final layer, not a city, a mountain, and not just any mountain. The mountain where the wind commands. He dedicated it to the God of the Word, the God of command. And he said, the command reached this mountain. This specific mountain, not a cave system. The city of Arata wasn't a city. It was the mountain where the stones glowed, where the ceremony was performed, and the envoy wasn't an administrator. He was a priest. He sealed the record in the glowing stone because that was the ritual. It solidified the command. It made Enlil's authority permanent in that place. But that leaves the bigger question unanswered. Why there? You look at the genetic study again. The bottleneck event. A rapid migration into the mountains around 2400 BCE. The study's authors suggested a climate shift, drier conditions on the Iranian plateau pushing people into the Kopet Dag. But that's a passive model, people fleeing. What if it wasn't fleeing? What if it was following? A commandment delivered by the wind. You have the tablet, the command. You have the glowing cave, the temple. You have the migration date. They all align. But one more piece makes it not a theory. It makes it a record. Go back to the ledger in Turkmenistan, the one listing the 17 artifacts. Find the researcher, Elena Kovaleva. She published on Sumerian trade. Then she stopped. That's easy to dismiss. But her 1998 paper has one footnote most people miss. She thanks her research assistant, a name, Alexei Dubrovsky, and she thanks the staff at the State Museum of Oriental Cultures for their invaluable assistance with the Sumerian catalog. That's normal. But Dubrovsky wasn't a linguist. He was a geologist, retired, formerly of the Soviet Ministry of Geology. And if you track him, he was part of the original 1939 survey team. He was Victor Petrov's junior. He was there when they found the tablet. He was there when they mapped the cave. He lived until 2002. He gave one interview in 1991 to a local Turkmen newspaper. Almost nobody read it. In it, he was asked about the glowing caves. He said a strange thing. He said the minerals weren't the interesting part. He said the interesting part was the alignment, that the main cave chamber pointed directly toward the peak of a specific mountain, and that the mountain's silhouette against the dawn sun on the summer solstice matched a symbol, the symbol for Enlil. He drew it for the reporter, a simple cuneiform wedge, the one that means Lord. The newspaper didn't print the drawing, They called it The Ramblings of an Old Man. But the interview transcript exists in the museum's archive, filed with Kovaleva's papers. She had it. She read it. And her next paper was going to be about mountain alignments and Sumerian star lore. She never published it. She left academia 3 months later. No explanation. Now you don't have a theory. You have a chain. A Sumerian god of authority. A commandment carved in stone in a specific cave that points to a specific mountain. A genetic bottleneck showing a rapid, purposeful migration to that same mountain range at the exact same time. And a government report sealing a borehole over an artificial chamber for cultural contamination risk. A risk that has nothing to do with archaeology. A risk that applies to something biological, or something that carries a command. Yen-El-Il was the god of the wind, not just storms, the wind that scatters seeds, the wind that carries pollen, the wind that moves populations, the wind that whispers. What if the commandment wasn't written? The stone? What if the stone just recorded it? What if the ritual in the glowing cave wasn't about solidifying authority? What if it was about receiving it? A transmission. And what if the migration wasn't people moving to a new place? It was people following an order planted in their blood. The bottleneck wasn't a disaster. It was a selection, a rapid evolutionary pressure, directed. And the sealed chamber 80 meters down isn't a tomb. It's the source, the thing that was transmitting, the thing that required the glowing minerals to function, the thing that made the cave a temple, and the reason every record of it has been buried, classified, or dismissed isn't conspiracy. It's containment, because you don't build a city around that. You build a mountain over it. You call the mountain Shar-Irata, the city of Arata, not because it was a city of gold, because it was a city of stone, built to contain a god's voice. And the envoy didn't bring a message from a king. He brought a key, a dedication, to turn it on. And that is why the tablet is in the wrong museum, why the map is in the wrong archive, why the ledger stops, why the drill core data is sealed, not to hide a city, to hide the fact that the city was a lid, and the wind never stopped commanding. You can hear it, if you know where to listen, in the genetic bottleneck of a population, in the alignment of a cave, in a line of text on a tablet that everyone ignored for 80 years. The command is still there, waiting for the right conditions to be read again, not in Sumerian, in something more fundamental. The silence after the borehole was sealed isn't administrative, it's reverence. And the biggest question isn't what's down there, it is what happens if the mountain opens